And we are live. What is going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And we have a special show today. We are live on the Off the Ball network. I'm happy to have two special guests with me, two members of the Off the Ball network. I got Edgar and I got Steven Gillespie. Guys, what's going on today?
What's up, fellas?
What's up, guys? Not much. Just
Yeah,
chilling. About to go
yeah,
on a
man.
hike.
Yeah. Oh,
Do a
yeah.
show and on a hike.
There you go. Double duty, man. Double
There
duty.
you go.
I
Yeah,
have to,
I
you
mean,
know.
yep, you
To,
gotta
to,
do
to
what
all
you
the
gotta do.
sports fans out there, you know, when your wife or your girlfriend needs you to do something, you got to.
Man, I think we all know about that for sure.
Absolutely.
right?
I've been married for almost 10 years, man. I know.
I've had to limit my shows because my girlfriend's like, I can't stay in the room while you're on the show for 2 hours. I was like, okay, babe, I got you.
Yeah.
So I've limited the amount of shows I've done, but still, I'm
It's about
excited to.
finding that balance, man.
Exactly, right. You got to be able to find that balance, which is,
Yeah.
but we're here. We're live, and I'm happy to have you guys on the show today. Obviously, it's a lot of craziness that's gone on, to say the least, in the last few days of
Yep.
the NBA. But to say the least, right?
Yeah.
It's
That's putting it
crazy.
nicely.
That's putting it nicely, right? It's been a lot of chaos, a lot of craziness in the league. But before we get back, because obviously, games were postponed these last 2 days. They're resuming back tomorrow, which is great. We'll have I think we have 3 games on schedule for tomorrow. But before we get into that, the draft. Obviously, the draft. I feel like been preparing for this draft for months and months and months. This is the longest draft preparation I've ever had. We've ever had. For the draft, and obviously, myself, Steven, we've posted our big boards on the offtheballnetwork.com, and I'm happy to get Edgar's thoughts on this draft. Oh, just before we get into just guys we like in this draft. Edgar,
Yeah.
for the Knicks, obviously that's our team. We're New York Knicks fans. Obviously, we know we have the 8th pick. We obviously everyone saw the if you tuned in for the lottery show, you saw me and Edgar's disappointment and getting the 8th pick. But like we talked right before the show, if you have the right scouting and you have the right people, in the front office, you can get great players wherever you pick. I mean, we saw San Antonio for years and years and hell decades, draft in the 20s and be able to get great players. Oklahoma City has done it, with the amount of guys they got, and with the Warriors and Toronto. I mean, Toronto
Yep.
keeps finding players, undrafted guys, late first round guys, second round guys. So it's been proven that you can find guys. The Nets did it too. So with the 8th pick, obviously this draft, like we've talked about, it's a wide range. I mean, there's no consensus number one. Like I've said so many times, people can have James Wiseman one on their board, and then I've seen James Wiseman in the 20s. Same thing with Obi Toppin and LaMelo Ball, Killian Hayes.
Obi
Vassell.
Toppin is all over the place.
Obi Toppin is the one prospect who is literally all over the place. I've seen people say he should go 1 to Minnesota, and I've seen people say he's a second-round pick. I think that's crazy. I think they're absolutely, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I've heard that. But that's what you have when there wasn't an NCAA tournament and there was barely even any conference tournaments. So with the 8th pick the Knicks have, what are you looking for with that pick? Is it go to get a point guard, or should the Knicks go just strictly for whoever the best player available is with that 8th pick?
I think, well, I mean, I wanted the number 1 pick. That's no surprise. I thought our needs we needed a point guard. That's what I thought we needed. I wanted LaMelo Ball because to me, his passing, court vision is something that you can't really teach. And talk about his shooting, I think his shooting is something that can definitely be worked on. But his passing and awareness, and the fact that he's always looking for his teammates is something that you can't really teach like that. So I wanted a point guard. Now, obviously, we didn't get the number 1 pick. We got the 8th pick. And since we got the number 8th pick, one of the guys that I was thinking about was maybe Cole Anthony. I mean, he has connection. Obviously, he has the connections with the Knicks since his father played with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think he'd be a good guard to have on our team. He's a bit of a scorer. I think he's a bit of a scorer. You know,
we need that.
We need
the
that.
Knicks do need that. You know, a pick and roll guy. I mean, I think he'd be absolutely insane in the pick and roll game. You know,
right?
Because he's explosive. You know,
right? You could say maybe he's a bit undersized because guards are getting bigger and bigger now, like taller and whatnot. But I think he'd be a good fit for our team. You know, I think it's definitely his scoring is something that we definitely need and we sorely lack at the point guard spot. And I think he's tough. I think defensively, he's a tough kid. He's a tough guy. Like I don't think he'd be a problem on that end either. In terms of passing and whatnot, it's something that he'd have to be more aware of. He'd have to improve on that. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's when people talk about Cole Anthony and you just look at his stats and you look at his shooting, his field goal percentage, people automatically get turned off. He didn't have a great year at UNC. They were open. They didn't have a good year this year. Let's face it. UNC was a very down year for UNC, and he was also banged up too. And I think that's another the reason why people kind of forget about Cole Anthony and don't think. But the more you look into Cole Anthony, and I think he would be a good fit for the Knicks. Like I said, we talk about that pick and roll aspect. I think he'd be very lethal in that pick and roll. For him going full speed downhill, you know, he's a super athlete. I mean, he's up there as probably one of the best athletes in this draft. I mean, you think him, Obi Toppin. I mean, he's definitely one of the premier athletes in this draft. James White. I mean, he's a freak athlete, and I think people just forget about, you know, they just, like I said, they look at the stats and they're like, oh well, he can't shoot. Not shooting percentage is all that. He wasn't great. Blah blah blah. And I understand that, but you have to also factor in that he was banged up. He was definitely banged up this year, and the team wasn't that good. That was not a good team he had around. Not the team he was expected to play on. I mean, preseason, I mean, people were talking about Cole Anthony as being a top, you know, one of the top picks in the draft, and you know, I feel like with the 8th pick, listen, I like guys like Vassell. Devin Vassell to me is someone I really like. But you know, if Cole Anthony's there and if that's the pick, I wouldn't sour on that like some Knicks fans would. I think he would be a great fit. I think his game would translate better in the pros with the pace than it would in college. Because in college, you're playing everything slowed down in college a lot. You know, you're dealing with a lot of zone defense and all that. And in the NBA, I think he's going to be a better pro than he was in college, even though he was only in college for a year. I think he can excel in the league at this place. Steven, what do you think about that?
You know, I'm not as high on Cole Anthony as other people are. I mean, obviously for one of the reasons you brought up, you know, Chris, was that field goal percentage. And I get, right, like you can't always just look at that one area. Mm-hmm. But whenever you're looking at a team need, right, it's not just evaluating the player, which is what I did too, right, but the team fit. And there's really not a lot of floor spacing around him on the roster that's currently constructed. Obviously, that could be addressed during free agency. But if you look, the Knicks have a lot of players that are returning this year, and one area they didn't really excel in for last season was floor spacing, right? So I think that's kind of what you would see. That would kind of transfer over from what you saw at UNC, right? Like the floor spacing wasn't very good at UNC last year either. So I think that you would see a lot of the same issues presented to him. Now, with that being said, I think at 8th, I actually have a guy on my big board at 8th that I don't think will go 8th. I just think that by the time it's all said and done, people will look back and be like, how did we let this guy slip that far? and that's Cassius Winston out of Michigan State.
You
I
love
think,
you some Cassius Winston, man.
dude, I'm telling you, I know that you've evaluated, but like go back and watch the film. I know that he's an older guy. For a high draft pick, he's 22 years old. There's stars in the league already that are younger than him, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what a point guard in the NBA does now, you have to be able to run the pick and roll. He did that very effectively at Michigan State. He's a good finisher. His field goal percentage is actually about 7% higher than Cole Anthony. He shot 43% from deep and 85% at the line. I mean, you're talking like double-figure efficiency advantage for Cassius Winston in all those areas over Cole Anthony. He's not as tall as he is, right? That would be a concern. He's kind of your Kyle Lowry or Fred VanVleet size. I just think that his motor and, he comes across as a winning player. I've watched Cole Anthony a lot. To me, he doesn't really make a lot of winning plays, and you could kind of pick that argument apart if you want. But like, if you're looking to truly rebuild an organization that's in dire need of an overhaul, so to speak, you got to get guys with a winning mentality. So like, I would take guys like Kira Lewis Jr. I think is even higher on my board than Cassius Winston. I think Kira Lewis Jr. would be an outstanding fit in New York.
I mean, if we're talking about like dream scenarios, I mean, Kyra Lewis at 8, if he's there, and I think he could be there.
It's possible.
I mean, he's a blur, man. And the amount of, I've been really big on him the last few weeks. And if he's there, man, it would be hard for the Knicks to pass up on him. And he's just gotten better from his freshman year to sophomore year. Every part of his game just got better. His passing, his scoring, field goal percentage, 3-point shooting, decision making, everything.
He turns the ball over a little much, but I mean, he's playing at played at an Alabama team that wasn't like super high, So, and he would be seeing a little bit more of the same in New York. So that turnover percentage and that turnover rate would probably be a little high his first year. That'd be something that Knicks fans would have to kind of live with, but I don't know, just the idea of him and Barrett in the open court in a transition offense, high-paced, offense would be phenomenal to watch. And I know that you guys aren't happy that the Knicks got the 8th pick this year, right? But in this draft, there's a couple things. One, like you mentioned earlier, Chris, there's not a clear-cut number 1 overall pick. Mm-hmm. And then 2, it's guard-heavy, and that's a position that I think the Knicks need, right? Like they need a lead guard.
So many good guards in this draft. That's why,
exactly.
Obviously, you want a high pick so you can get the best possible player, early. But like you said, Steven, there's a abundance of riches at point guard. I mean, it is loaded at guard and point guard. You can, at 8. I mean, there's a chance at 8 you can have Tyrese Halliburton, Kyra Lewis, Cole Anthony. I mean,
Killian Hayes, R.J. Hampton,
Tyrese Maxey. I mean, there's Grant Riller. There's abundance of guys that it could be there at 8. And if they feel like, because I believe Killian Hayes and I think LaMelo all go early. If they truly believe that one of those guys are a franchise guards, they possibly can package those 2 picks, and along with that second-round pick, which is very valuable.
Yep, a high second.
Especially nowadays, we've seen a lot of second-round picks blossom.
Yeah, and teams are paying for them too. Teams will buy them.
Teams are buying second-round because those are valuable. Those are guys you could develop, put them in the G League or stash them overseas. Some guys and bring them, and they could develop. Especially in this year's draft, which is how the craziness is. But that's something the Knicks can do, trade up and get one of those guys. That's another avenue they can go if they truly believe that LaMelo or Killian are the guys. Now, I've read reports that, they're not looking to do that, per se, because they feel like they can get their guy, whoever, the best player at 8, but you just never know. Things can change. I mean, what is it? October is the draft?
October 16th.
October. So a lot of things can change in 2 months. So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
And if you look at the teams that are ahead of the Knicks on the draft too, not many of them have an actual need at the point guard position, right? Like if you look at Minnesota with the number 1, they have D'Angelo Russell. Golden State, we obviously know who they have. The Hornets, they have a couple of guards that they've invested in. The The Bulls have guards they've invested in. The Cavaliers have guards. You know, Atlanta, Detroit has Derrick Rose. They could probably go guard still, but you're looking at, you know, 2 or 3 teams ahead of the Knicks that may select a guard in a guard
Detroit
deep draft.
For sure. I think
Yeah.
just looking, like you said, Minnesota, they got, you know, they have D'Angelo Russell, so maybe they don't need another guard because LaMelo, Killian Hayes are going to need the ball in their hands, and you already have a ball dominant point guard. Do you need another one? Or you look at Golden State, they got Steph and they got Clay. I don't think they keep the pick. I think eventually they're gonna trade that pick to get someone. Charlotte, you know, they got Graham. They could still, you know,
They got Rozier. I think if LaMelo is available here, they get LaMelo.
I don't see Rozier stopping them from drafting one of those guys that they think so. You know, I don't think that's gonna. Chicago with Kobe.
They were thinking about trading Rozier though.
Yeah, I mean Terry Rozier. I mean, in his role in Boston, he was great, but as a lead guy,
and that's a lot of money for a backup point guard too.
For
like
a guy who shoots like what in the 39-40%. I mean,
yeah.
And then you have Chicago.
Think about that.
Yeah.
We almost ended up with Terry Rozier because we were interested in either signing him or trading for him.
Yeah, the Knicks were in on him, and I think we lucked out on that one for sure. I mean, not that I don't want to disrespect Terry Rozier because in a role like in a Boston role, he played that role perfect. But when you go to the Knicks or Charlotte where you're expected to do more, it's not. That's just not a role that you want a guy like Rozier. You know,
and Graham surplants you out of nowhere. You know, as the lead
and then you got Graham, who's so you got Chicago at 4. I mean, they got Kobe White and they got Levine in the backcourt. So I mean, I think they're pretty set there.
They still have Chris Dunn.
And then Chris Dunn too. You know, that's probably someone who's another guy who's gonna be on the trade market. Cleveland has 87 point guards. Feels like they draft the point guard top 5 every year.
But none of them are good, so they may go guard again.
They got Sexton and they got Garland.
And Garland's got high upside, but he was awful last year.
That doesn't make sense.
Terrible.
Atlanta has Trae Young.
Yeah. Kevin Huerter.
You know, I don't see them drafting one of those guys because I think that won't mesh well with Trae Young and all that. I think getting another wing to go with them, like an Isaac Okoro or something like that would be solid. Detroit. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of their guard. I mean, Derrick Rose is their guard right now. Langston Galloway. I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, I can't think of their but.
Well, what about your Duke guy there?
I mean, they have him.
Look, we've seen crazier things. We've seen crazier things happen. We can't really say that these teams won't take a point guard because we've seen in prior drafts.
Just looking off the anything could change, of course.
I think what was it that one year when I think don't quote me on this, but I think it was Minnesota that one year where they drafted like 4 or 5 point guards.
They drafted 2 consecutively. They had Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio, and they passed up on Curry and Harden.
Minnesota took the 2 point guards that weren't named.
Yeah.
I need more Minnesota Timberwolves slander because everyone talks about the Knicks almost getting Steph Curry, but at least Minnesota could have had Steph Curry twice. Like
Imagine
if you take Rubio.
Imagine had the Knicks passed.
They wouldn't have. I think they would. They might have traded him. Now that's a different story. They might have traded him when they got him. You know, a couple years out because his at one point, hey, Steph Curry's ankles were like suspect, and like the Warriors almost traded him. Like, I mean, they almost that dynasty almost didn't happen. Like, they almost traded Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. Like, a lot of things could change, but guess what? They stayed patient. They believed, and guess what? Everything worked out. They won 3 rings in 5 years. You know, so. But like you said, as far as the guards, I mean, you could even, you could even see Killian Hayes maybe drop to, I don't see it happening. I think trades. Listen, we can't predict trades, and
that's the other thing.
Because the team.
The Sixers have like 6 draft picks in this draft. The Boston Celtics have about 4 or 5 draft picks in this draft class.
The Celtics have some picks. We don't know who would trade up, but I think the Knicks can definitely be one of those teams that think about trading up because, if you get past 5, and you get to that Atlanta, Detroit area, and Killian Hayes or LaMelo's still there, and that you like I said, if you feel like that's your guy, you have to go get your guy. So I think the Knicks are one of those teams that are going to use those pieces to possibly trade up. Like I said, they can go best player available at 8, but like I said, if your guy's there and you feel like you have the assets to trade from, this is why you have assets, right? So you could do things like this, trade up. It's something I can see the Knicks doing. For sure.
Maybe I could see some people think that the Knicks. I personally think that it's a possibility, and maybe the Knicks trade up for a 3-and-D guy, type of guy. Maybe.
I mean, the thing is though is like at a top draft pick in this draft class, there's not really like a clear-cut 3-and-D guy. So I think that when you start getting into like the 10s and 15s, that's when you'll start seeing like a lot of these like kind of two-way guys go. Like Sadiq Bey, Isaac Okoro are my top 3-and-D guys.
Isaac Okoro has definitely been a hot name for the Knicks of late. And listen, he's definitely an intriguing prospect. He has the physical, he's physically, he's built like a tank. I obviously had great success at Auburn.
Yep.
It's the shooting. And I know
29% from deep is not what you're looking for in a 3-and-D prospect.
There are people comparing him to Luol Deng.
Well, he's getting a lot of Jimmy Butler comparisons too, and his free throw percentage. Like a lot of teams, when they evaluate if a guy will translate to a 3-and-D prospect, if that 3-point percentage is down, they'll look at the free throw percentage and see if that's something that they can build on. But he only shot 67% from the free throw line too, so those typical kind of indicators that you're looking for don't really scream that he's going to be a 3-and-D guy. Probably more of a D guy than a 3 guy, but we never know. We never know.
Listen, you're absolutely right. We don't know, but just watching the film, I don't know if he's going to translate into a guy who's going to average 17, 18, 20 points a game. I don't see that. Now, he could be great at everything else, and that could be fine. But from the Knicks, let's just talk about the Knicks. Can they afford to take another developmental offensive player? I don't think they can risk
No. That's why I think they go for a polished guard. Yeah, I think they go for more of a polished guard.
If you look at Devin Vassell, now. Vassell, to me, offensive game is definitely more advanced than Okoro's offense, for sure.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Now, he still has things to work on offensively, and he's probably not as good as a defensive player as Okoro.
No,
but he's still a hell of a defender.
With the patience.
That's definitely a player that I would definitely be more comfortable with the Knicks taking, because I feel like his offense could definitely translate a little bit more than Okoro's offense will.
Yeah, and I think people are kind of projecting Vassell a little too high in my eyes. And going back to Okoro real quick, like when you look at a 3-and-D guy, you want someone who's got the size to be able to handle those big wings, right? He's actually kind of undersized as a forward, right? He's 6'6". I mean, you see guys do well at that height, right? But they're kind of your top end defensive talents, and Okoro would have to be that at his height. And then you look at Vassell, he's 6'7", but he's less than 200 pounds, right? So we've seen what a guy like Gary Trent Jr.
His wingspan is long, so that helps.
It does, but I mean, to me, that kind of translates into more of like a potentially like more like a Robert Covington, who's not like a great on-ball defender, but as a help defender is where he makes his living. Yeah.
Yep. No, he's a great team defender, and that's really what you kind of need. Like, you need guys that are going to be able to be good, team defenders. Like, there's not too many, like, true on-ball defenders like that are truly dominant. Like, it's more you got to, it's team defense nowadays. Like, it's different from the basketball we saw growing up, where you lock up like that. It's about team defense. I mean, we see what the Rockets are doing. They don't have individuals that. A lot of great individual defensive players, but hell, they're playing some defense, team defense. So,
but it makes a big.
If you got guys,
go ahead.
Go.
We also.
No, you go, Steven.
Go.
We also
have
to see...
Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, Bubba.
I'm still kind of new at this, so I don't know when to.
You're good.
It's all good, man. You got it.
We'll get you a primer, and we'll get you ready.
I'm learning.
Figure this whole thing out.
I keep learning.
You'll get it, bro. I was horrible when I first did. I didn't know when to talk. I mean, I listened to some of my first shows, and I'm like, oh wow,
Yeah.
I was trash at this.
But
Don't know when to stop, when to start, when. So
speaking of,
Where
we
you
also
go?
got to look at all the players that might not be here for next season for the Knicks. If you
Mhm.
think about
Yeah.
this, we have a lot of guys who were signed on 1-year deals with player
1 year
options.
deals. Yeah,
And we might not even bring back half of these guys. Think about this. Are we bringing
the
back
majority
Taj
of them. Yeah.
Gibson? Are we
No.
bringing back Alfred Payton? Are we bringing
No.
back Wayne Ellington?
No.
Nah.
I mean, I think the only guy
Reggie
who might have
Bullock?
been signed a
No.
bit, Reggie Bullock.
Bullock,
Maybe
no.
the only guy who might have not been signed for just 1 year is maybe Julius Randle. I'm not too sure on that.
Yeah, he was like, I think, a 3-year deal with a player option,
So-
if I'm not mistaken.
Julius Randle has a 2+1.
2+1.
Right.
There you go.
2+1.
Yeah.
I believe.
So
2+1, yeah.
potentially,
So he's here for.
potentially a half of our squad might not even be here for next season. So we also got to factor that into who we're looking to draft and who
That's
we're
a good
looking to
point.
sign or who we're looking to trade our picks for if that's potentially something that we're trying to do.
I mean, I don't think any of those guys are going to factor in, even if they stay. I don't think those guys are going to be like are going to
The
really
one
affect
guy-
what the Knicks, are going to do with the draft. I don't think those guys they're not thinking about those guys like that.
Mhm.
I mean, the one guy I would factor in out of that bunch, if I had to do it personally, it'd probably be Taj Gibson. Now,
Yeah.
we know that he's getting older and he's not the greatest offensive player out there. He still plays very hard on defense.
He's
still
a good
very
vet too around.
He's very
Yeah, good
court-aware,
locker room
but
guy.
That's exactly my point, Chris. That's the main point that I was going to bring up with him. He's a great vet, and it's great to keep him around guys like Mitchell Robinson and Kevin Knox and Frank and RJ, who are still trying to develop and could use a solid vet in their ear at all times.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Rook, or hey, young guy, don't do this, do that. This is what you need to be doing on the floor. This is how you switch. This is how you play defense.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that you can't really put money on.
Yeah. And that's what they're going to have to figure out is how to mix having young guys and mixed veterans. Because last year they did a poor job of doing that. I would say, that was a terrible mix of guys. This year, I hope they could figure that out. And because you need as much as you need young guys and young, fast guys, you still need vets to win this league. Still need veterans. It's we see with the Hawks. I mean, not the Hawks. With Toronto, that you still need vets to win championships.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
As much as this league is going young, you still need veteran leadership in order to take that step and to be a playoff team or to possibly get to a championship. So the Knicks have to figure that out of how to blend in the youth, because they have a lot of picks coming up in these next few years, and the roster's already young. A lot of their top players are very young, and they just got to figure out how to blend in both of those things. Because last year, whatever the hell they did, it didn't work.
Mhm.
I'll be honest. If I had to
It
hold
didn't
over
work.
two guys, it'd be Taj and Bullock. I like it. Again,
Bullock is a solid.
He'd be a
solid
veteran minimum
3-and-D.
player if you need a rotational guy. Like, that would be the only reason I would bring him back. I could see Taj getting a little bit of a deal because not only is he a good vet, but obviously the ties with Thibodeau, you got to have a guy that has your back as a coach in the locker room,
and
right?
that's familiar with his system as well.
Exactly. Yep.
That can teach it to the young guys.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So Taj obviously has that experience, with being with Tiz all those years in Chicago. So I think,
And Minnesota.
I think, and in Minnesota, yeah, correct. Yeah, I forgot he was in Minnesota for a little bit. So I think Taj is definitely a guy they bring back. Now, obviously, you're not going to expect to, everyone's worried about, because he played so many minutes in Chicago, guys. He's not playing 30 minutes a game. Taj is not playing 30 minutes a game with the Knicks. So there's no need to worry about that. But, they definitely, they definitely need to blend in some good veterans, bring in some vets that know how to play the game of basketball, are going to teach these guys. Because listen, Kevin Knox, we got to figure that out. We got to figure that out. We got to figure out how to get him to show that he could be a solid NBA player. Because at this point, it's not looking great. And listen, his rookie year, he did show something. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, his shooting percentage and all that. A lot of the analytics, he wasn't great. But at least when you physically saw him play, you're like, okay, he could be like a solid player in this league, 17 points a game player. Okay, you take that. And then you look at year two, and I think it had to do with signing Marcus Morris, and knowing that this competition.
Yeah.
And maybe he just didn't, he wasn't ready for that. He thought he was going to get the job because at that point it was his job to lose, and then they added Marcus Morris and
RJ
Marcus
Barrett
Morris
competing with
RJ
ball
Barrett,
handling.
Julius Randle, Julius Randle, and just the lack of spacing, and I think that just really messed with this game a lot because you saw he just wasn't there. So if we can get a vet that can help him take that next to be a solid NBA player, because at this point we're not even asking for much for Kevin Knox. We just want you to be a solid rotational player at this point, and just show that you could be in this league. Because if he doesn't figure this thing out, I mean, he could be out of the league soon. I mean, you hate to say it because he's young, but we know how the NBA treats young guys. I mean, if you're not producing, man, they'll kick you to the curb. They want production right away. So, and remember, this isn't their guy. The front office, Leon Rose, Kevin Knox is not their guy. So, just because he was a top 10 pick, they don't care. That's not their guy. They might not. I've heard trade rumors with Kevin Knox. So
that's what I think would be good for him, though, is that the second draft is what you call it. Look at what Markelle Fultz did whenever he left Philly and he went to Orlando. He left a huge market, left a team that had huge expectations on him, and went to a team where he got to develop at his own rate. They didn't rush him along. I think Kevin Knox, obviously it would be nice to see him succeed in New York, but I think a team will take a chance on him because you even you saw a guy like Josh Jackson get a second chance in Memphis, and he was probably worse off than what you're seeing with Kevin Knox, right? So there's a chance that a team will be like, okay, maybe it's just playing in New York that didn't do so well for him. Maybe if we get him, we let him know, hey, we're not expecting you to develop into a star or a second banana or even a third banana. Just come over here and produce and, get his mind right. I think that he could do, kind of something similar to what we're seeing with Markelle Fultz, maybe on a smaller scale, but, it would still be nice for him to produce.
Yeah. I will say this, though. There were times where I watched him play and he looked mentally checked out at some points. And there was times where you'd see his man blow right past him, backdoor plays, even some rebounds and stuff. And you looked at him and he just didn't look there. He was not engaged. So it's not, it also has to come from him. And I know there was times where even Clyde and Mike Green would bring it up. He has to be more engaged when he plays as well. It seemed like his motor was not always at 100%.
His defense was awful too. One thing. If your offense is off, it's going to happen, obviously. But to me, defensively is where that I saw a lot of issues. He was just getting right. He didn't have the right reads. He wasn't reading the offense. He was getting backdoored so many times, and that to me is a bigger issue. Like I said, offensively, if you're off, you're off. That's one thing. That sometimes you can't control that. You could be, whatever, but defensively is where I think the lack of engagement on defense, and like I said, there was so many backdoor plays where they and there's one-on-one plays where he's just getting toasted, and that's the one aspect he really needs to focus.
But that goes to show you that's where the difference goes. See, for example, that's why the fans get frustrated. You could fans would accept bad shooting nights. They'll accept some floundering offense at times. But one thing we won't accept is poor effort, lack of effort on defense, lack of effort with hustle plays. That's why do you think the fans love Frank so much? I get it. Exactly. Frank was drafted at 8. Frank's offense hasn't come through yet. I still believe that he can still be a solid player offensively. Not a star, but
he gives it to you defensively at least.
But he gives it to you on defense every single night. This guy plays his heart out on defense, and that's why there's so many fans that still stick by him.
Well, that was a part of his game coming into the NBA, and like
Right.
whenever you have that area that you're good at and it translates to the NBA, you're more confident in your abilities to be able to go out and perform, right? And we can't expect these cats today to be, you know, the guys that we grew up watching like in the 90s and early 2000s, right? Where, you know, the mentality is so much different. And that's why I brought up Markelle Fultz. It's not that he wasn't able to go out and do well, but you know, mental health is such a big thing that we talk about in professional sports nowadays. And you know, people are more aware to it, you know, at a younger age. Like I'm 30, I don't know how old you guys are, but you know, there's guys coming into the league that are more than 10 years younger than me. And you know, we didn't talk about mental health when I was playing sports, right? Like now that's something that they grow into now, and whether or not that makes them a worse competitor or not, that's not what I'm arguing for, right? But if these guys who are conditioned in the mental health era are coming up in professional sports and they're aware of it, maybe they're more susceptible to being in a bad position, not going out and being able to perform because they're trying to be conscious of their mental health, right? So it's hard for these athletes today to, you know, pick themselves up by their bootstraps in the same position where they're also getting slammed. You know what I mean? So that's why you see a guy like Markelle Fultz leave Philadelphia, who's a hard-nosed fan base as well, right? They love their defense. They love the grit and grind. You know, people that are just, you know, nose to the grindstone. And Markelle Fultz wasn't playing that way. So you saw him go down to Orlando where the fan base is happy with being a 7th or 8th seed. You know what I mean? Philadelphia, that's unacceptable. But in Orlando, that's okay. So now he's in an area where he's comfortable. He's not expected to be a number 1 overall draft pick for that fan base and for that organization. And we've seen him flourish because there's not as high as expectation on him. So that's why I brought up, you know, Kevin Knox can kind of do something similar where, you know, playing in New York, although the success hasn't been there, the fan base has very high expectations. That's one thing I've learned in talking with you two, right? Like you brought up Frank Ntilikina and like, yeah, he's not that great of a player, but his defense, he brings it to you every night. When you're picking apart a guy like Kevin Knox for a fan base like this, at as high as draft pick as he was and as successful as he was in the summer league, and that didn't translate, you start seeing guys writing him off. In that mental health aspect, you know, maybe he is checked out because of that. And if you see him go to a smaller market team, like even a place like Portland that does need wing help, maybe he goes there and there's stars all around him. Maybe he goes to a team like that and flourishes in a small role because there's not as high as expectation on him.
Yeah, and I think we talk about.
I fully agree with all that, Steven.
Yeah. No, he's definitely right because we expect 19-year-old kids to come into the league with grown men and expect them to adapt like that. I mean, at 19 years old, I don't know about you guys. At 19 years old, I didn't know anything.
No, I had to join the military at 19 because of my decision making.
I already was. I was already dropped out of college, you know, and was trying to figure out how to, like, what the hell just happened, and then, you know, trying to figure out these things at 19. How do I adult? And then, you know, obviously I figured it out, and then I eventually got my degree and all that. But at 19, imagine going to, you know, you're going against, you know, obviously from like as Markelle Fultz, you know, he goes from being the guy in high school, the guy in college, and then you go to the NBA. And then you're expected to be the missing piece.
You're a part of this new big three now to carry them to a championship.
You're expected to be a part of the process and change everything for Sixers, and then things don't go your way, and then, you know, they obviously they definitely messed up a lot of things there because obviously we see that everyone gets hurt there. And that's a way bigger mess. Yeah, and then Colangelo and that situation and the bad situation
and
that
the injuries killed them.
And the injuries and like they just didn't develop him properly. And
he just forgot how to play, and that's why I brought up the mental health. Is like,
and the mental thing is like, we all saw the play where he's on the free throw line and he's double clutching, and it's like, dude. He forgot how to play basketball. Yeah, and the shooting, and you're like, dude. What was you weren't that player in college? Like what happened? And we're just like, and we don't, and a lot of people just like, oh, he's just trash and all that, and we don't factor in that mental like he physically obviously had his limitations with some things, but I think that was his mental was just off, and I think we don't we expect these 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids to come into the league and be mentally to be adults, and we have to realize everyone's learning process is different.
Yeah, and I wrote about that a
Everyone's
little
learning
bit in that article that I posted yesterday. Where we expect these athletes, because they get paid a lot of money, that money is supposed to translate into areas of humanity, right? Like that money is supposed to make you think better. That money is supposed to cover all emotional wounds that you may have coming into the league from whatever background that you came into. We expect that money to be a cure-all, and you're a high-paid professional. You're expected to be this, just well-oiled machine and be able to do everything at a high level every night. And, not every profession has that level of scrutiny. Not every profession is evaluated and has a statistic that show how much weight you put on a foot at any given time. Like, we know everything about what these players do on every given night. And because of that, we feel like we know them on a personal level, even though we don't even talk to them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
with social media and all that too, like and all the news, like constant news, and we're knowing about all these players. It's sometimes it's too much information that we know about these guys. Like and we don't and people forget at the end of the day they're humans. We're talking about humans. Just because they're 6'9" and they're 200 pounds, and they can shoot the ball at better than anyone in the world.
And they have a 40-inch vert,
40-inch vertical. At the end of the day, they have the emotions just like us three, right?
Exactly.
They have the same. They have emotions. They go through life things. Whether it's dealing with their families, dealing with death, dealing with sickness, dealing with
expectations.
Expectations, because listen, this is their job. Just because their job is not not working at a McDonald's or working
at a factory
at the end of the day, if they don't do their job right, they get fired too.
Yeah.
Athletes get fired the same way any other place, any other job. If you don't perform, you get fired. They get fired too, and they lose out on money too. So I just hate not to get off track, but the way people just humanize athletes and just don't care about what they have to say, and like I saw someone today talked about LeBron James and like, oh, what has he done, blah blah, and I'm like, bro, just shut up. Like, seriously, shut up. Like, LeBron James has done way more in life than you have done. He's donated way more money than you will ever donate. So just shut up.
Or make altogether.
Or make. This dude, LeBron's done more. Like, and just because he doesn't do the stuff you want him to do, because of everything going on, because he doesn't, do the stuff you want him to do, he's not doing his. Please, like I'm sick of that.
Yeah.
I'm sick when people bring up that stuff with athletes, like, and like, oh, they need to donate their money and all that. They do
a lot of it.
A lot of it, like people just want to just look at it's crazy, man. It's just crazy. Not to get sidetracked.
No, you're fine, man.
That aspect of how people dehumanize athletes and just shut up and dribble. Like, we've been through this. We've talked about this. Like, the whole shut up and dribble. Like, just you're here for my entertainment.
Stick to basketball.
And stick to basketball. We don't want politics in sports. Guys, have you not seen 2020?
I'm not going
it's all politics.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm a passionate Knicks fan. Obviously, I root for this team like I'm crazy. Some people look at me like, why are you still a fan of this team? They suck. They never win. Whatever. And I want to see the players on my.
You're addicted to pain.
Play well, and at this point, I want to see all the players on my team do well, play well, excel, and make us and get us W's. And it's interesting. This season, I got very frustrated with players like Kevin Knox and Dennis Smith Jr. Who just seemed to be mentally checked out and just couldn't do anything right when they were on the floor. And I took at times to Twitter and said things like, hey, we should get rid of them, get them out of here and all this stuff. I've been guilty of it, but now that with everything that's happened, I do sit down and think about like, hey, it's a bit messed up to say these things, because at the end of the day, these guys are human, and like you say, they're young. They're young kids who are trying to figure it out. You know, I thought about how Dennis Smith Jr. had to deal with the passing of his stepmother during the season, and I thought to myself, you know,
That's
maybe
another
at
thing
times
with
it's just
Dennis
not
Jr.
good.
Like
Maybe
people
we
don't
should we should take a step back as fans
empathy. We need to have more
and
empathy for these
dial it
players.
back on the criticism at times. You know, like
Yeah.
we should take a step back sometimes and realize that these guys are human beings too, and that
Yeah,
we're
$5
not
million
putting any,
doesn't
we're
pay for
not
your
helping
mother's life,
anything
you know.
out by saying all
Exactly.
these. Right, you know, we're not helping it. We're not making anything better by saying some of these crazy things that sometimes as fans we say, because at the end of
Yeah,
the day,
you
they
burn
still
their
check social
jerseys
media.
and
They're still human. They're still human. They
man.
still have feelings. They're still sensitive. You know, as much as you want to say, yeah, they get paid millions of dollars. They should be happy in life or all that. It's not true. You know, they still read our comments or they still see them on talk shows and stuff like that. I thought about it. There's criticism, and then there's unfair criticism that takes it too far.
That's
you know?
off the field stuff,
Yeah.
off the court stuff.
or you end up like Harrison Barnes, right? And you're playing in the middle of a game. You know, if you're Harrison Barnes in the middle of playing in the
You get
game, and
traded.
then about halfway through the game, you find out you've been traded.
Yeah.
You know, like no other performance has
Yeah,
that.
that was
Like
crazy.
I'm not serving in the military to find out that like, oh hey, like tomorrow I got to go check into the Air Force. You know what I mean? Like that's not happening.
Yeah, you don't go mid surgery and they just say, "Oh, you got to stop here," but you got transferred to a different hospital, and that doesn't happen. But in sports, you know, it's like I said, man.
And then they got families they got to worry about. You know what I mean? Like what schools they go to.
People don't care about that.
Nope,
They
'cause
don't
they got
care.
money.
They don't think about those things. They're like, oh, but they're making all this money, and you know, teachers should be making all this money and stuff. It's like last time I checked, nobody's going on is watching teachers live on ESPN.
Yeah.
You know, they're not getting Mr. Williams jerseys. You know, I don't think people realize all this aspect, like all this. Like, yes, teachers and all these people should get more money.
Simple supply and demand. Like that's really all it is.
When you, it's crazy. It's crazy. But we just need to empathize with players, like, and everything that's going on the last few days. You know, people just need to have and listen, Steve. I saw your comments on that you've dealt with.
Yeah,
I've dealt with some stuff
from people that I like love dearly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I trust me, bro. I saw.
Yeah.
I saw. And it's crazy how people think, man. It's crazy. They have no empathy for people. Just because you haven't gone through, you know, these situations yourself, like to have no empathy for others, humans.
Yeah.
Other humans. It's crazy, bro. It's crazy. I don't get it, but you know, it's what I'm 100% behind the players and what they did.
Yeah.
I'm 100% behind the players what they did.
But
if they feel like this is the way to go, I'm with you guys. You know, because I'm an NBA fan. I love basketball. You know,
yeah, and you can't root for these guys, right?
Exactly.
And pretend to care about what they do, and then have zero part of at least listening, like the bare minimum, the absolute bare minimum.
People don't like to listen, though, bro.
They don't, man.
Big update, real quick. Kristaps Porzingis is done for the remainder of the playoffs.
He tore his meniscus.
Oh my goodness,
that's not good.
Luka, we're gonna see Luka. You know, kind of last game
Luka Magic.
Yeah, he went back to being a second year, like 20-year-old NBA player.
He went back to being regular Luka, not super Luka.
Not Luka legend.
Bigger picture, this doesn't sit well for a guy like Porzingis, 7'3" and knee problems now.
But that's all. We all knew that was gonna happen with him. You know, we all knew that was gonna. I mean, it's not natural to be 7'3" and move like that. Like it's just not natural. Guys like that don't last. It's just.
And they're not forcing him to do anything on it either, which is huge because you know it's going to be a short turnaround for next year supposedly. So you know.
Yeah.
And they're not expected to win it all this year anyway. You know what I mean? So like, it's smart for them to let him recover and come back.
It's smart for them to let him recover, and you know,
that's true.
You know, it's unfortunate. because you'd like to see him, him and Luka go at it against the Clippers full strength.
He was just getting back to being healthy.
He was ball. He in the bubble. Porzingis in the bubble was doing his thing.
Second, I think all bubble second team.
Yeah, he was all bubble second team. I mean, he was doing his thing, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah, he was actually playing very well.
Yeah, and I'm not one of these Knicks fans that like roots for him to fail every single time he plays. Like unfortunately, I saw people posted like he's soft because he has a torn meniscus. I'm like, how is that soft? That's a torn meniscus. I've had torn meniscus, man. That's not fun to deal with. That's not an easy injury to deal with and play with.
And clearly, he's not like looking to go out there and tear his muscles apart.
Exactly. Like I know, yes, he's had his injury history, but I don't know about you, Edgar, but I'm not a big I hate Porzingis guy. I know I'm sure you've seen on Knicks Twitter, like people can't stand Porzingis. I'm not on that level. I feel like they could have definitely worked that relationship. And yes, it goes both ways, but if the Knicks really wanted to keep him, they could have kept him. Like they could have kept him. But
yeah.
I'm not a big Porzingis hater like that. Like
no.
Yes, if he plays against the Knicks, I'm not rooting for him, but I don't like root for him to
fail.
Like I'm not happy he's hurt. Like I'm not happy he's hurt. Like
yeah, I
want to see good. I'm a basketball fan. I want to see good basketball. But.
Yeah, it is what it is. He left. Move on.
He's I'm over it. Like I'm over it that he's gone. Like I don't like you hear people still like Knicks fans are still like when he they still bring him up. I'm like, dude, he's gone. Like. He's not a Knick no more, so I can't worry about that. It's like being a Giants fan with Odell. Odell's gone. Like I can't get mad at that no more. Like he's gone. So it's kind of the same thing. Like so he's gone. He's not a member of the Knicks. I can't worry about Porzingis. I have to worry about now and what the teams are doing now. I'm not worried about Porzingis, but people still worry. Knicks fans still care about Porzingis so much, but
don't care about how the team treated him and dealt with him. Yeah.
Like we didn't actually, we could blame. That's a lot of Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson, he messed this team up. So we should be more mad. I don't see enough. We don't get mad at Phil Jackson enough. We get mad at Porzingis, but we don't get mad at Phil Jackson ruining that relationship with Porzingis.
Well, because Phil Jackson's important to the LeBron James debate, so you can't bash him. You have to treat him nicely.
We can go all day.
His reputation got a little bit fixed, after the
Last Dance helped him.
Last Dance.
Yeah, that helped him a lot.
Oh yeah,
but he still messed us up. I don't care. So he still hurt us big time.
Yeah.
But,
so hey,
obviously
I'll always say.
Oh no, did we lose our guy?
To me, what ruined the Knicks from that great season we had from the 54 win season is three things to me.
Mm-hmm.
One, Roy Hibbert and Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean,
very much.
We haven't been any good after that.
Well, the Bargnani deal too.
Oh man, we could have just kept Steve Novak here.
Yeah, well, hey, Chris, I want to ask you something, kind of tying back to the draft. Who is the guy on your board that you don't see getting a lot of, like my Cassius Winston, right? Like you don't see him a lot as highly rated as I have them, but I'm just sold on his ability and his talent, and I'm not going to listen to anybody tell me anything different. To me, Cassius Winston is a top 10 dude in this draft. Who do you have on your board that may not be as high as my Cassius Winston, but a guy that you think people are sleeping on?
It's my Duke guy. It's Vernon Carey. Carey. I've seen people have him ranked in the 70s.
I have him 23rd.
That's high for some people. Like I have him ranked 29.
Yeah.
Now in other years he's probably a top 10, 15 pick.
Yeah.
But the fact that people are saying like his game can't translate and all this, and because his defense and all that, I think his offensive skills are tremendous. He is a gifted offensive player. I'm not saying you should play him 30 minutes and he should be there late games because his defense, is not there. But man, is he gifted as a big man and someone who can score, and that can score for sure,
Rebound.
and someone rebound, and he could shoot it a little bit from the outside. He showed it at Duke.
Yeah,
so,
his 3-point percentage was 38%.
Yeah, so like he could definitely do stuff, and I just don't see why people are so low on him. Like, is it because
he's old-ish and he's kind of like
he's a freshman. He's 19. Like,
I mean, for a freshman, he's like an older, like, you know what I mean though, right? Like he's not like he's more on the older side of the freshman class. You know what I mean? He's not like.
But still,
yeah.
He literally does. I mean,
that's what people look at, though, man. Like, people look at, like, not only age in general, but relative to the other people in your draft, like in your class. You know what I mean? People get crazy about that. I have him going 26th overall to the Celtics, and I think that would be an outstanding fit. And you look at, too, the other players.
Some of the live drafts I've done.
Yeah, I think if you look at guys like Joel Embiid, Josip Nurkic, Nikola Jokic, the Lopez twins, and Nikola Vucevic, like those are all dudes with similar builds in him, and they're all doing well in the NBA. Steven Adams would be another guy you can throw in there, right? Like, there's a place for big men like Vernon Carey Jr. in this league.
You still need size in this league. You still need size.
Boban Marjanovic.
Exactly.
You need size.
You
need size, and you can always teach shooting. I mean, you're not going to get
someone that still has some touch.
Steph Curry,
yeah,
touch.
The touch.
Good defender. I mean, I don't know. He's just big.
You can practice your shooting.
To me, he's someone that is definitely going to get better. And I just the fact that people aren't high enough are have him so low. Maybe it's my Duke fandom. Maybe it's that my Duke pride that they're hurting. But I just watching the games he played. I mean, in the post and just he took over. Like he took over, and he can definitely do some stuff in mismatches. Especially on pick and rolls and stuff. He could be a mismatch. I know he's not perfect defensively, but like I said, if you got a good help defense, man, I mean, in today's league, it's different. Today's league,
he's still got 1.5 blocks a game.
He's still, like you said, he still does some stuff that I like, and I think his offense can translate.
He's just so strong too, man. Just so strong.
He's a bull. He's 6'10", 260 pounds. I mean,
he can give you a good 12 minutes a night on a good team.
He's a bull.
He could give you a good 12 minutes a game.
But people have him ranked low. I believe he's a first round pick. I think he's definitely going to be in the back end of the first round. I still believe in his talent. I feel like a team like Boston would probably use him perfectly, and that's probably definitely a good spot for him to go. But yeah, that's definitely one of those guys that, like, I don't get why people are so low on him. But I think he's definitely a first round pick for sure, no doubt. First round talent, and should be. It's just, if you watch him, you're like, he's a first round pick. I don't care if he's a big man, and no, that dude's a first round pick. So I hope he gets selected in the first round. I think he'll be towards later, between 20 and 30, in the end of first round. But to me, he's a first round pick, so that's probably my guy for sure.
What about a guy that everybody else is high on, but you have significantly lower than other people?
Oh man, that's tough because, like you said, this draft, like I said, is all over the place.
Yeah. I have two of them.
This is the question.
You go first.
Okay.
This is a very
So
you go.
My first one is Onyeka Okongwu. I think people get really tantalized by his, how strong he is. He's obviously a decent rebounder and a shot blocker. But a couple things that I look at with him: one, his offensive shot, not that great. He was good around the basket. I mean, anything outside of arm's reach was a tall ask for him. He got in foul trouble quite a bit in a lot of the high, leverage games that I saw him play in. And then defense, I know that he's looked at as a great defender, but if you go and look, I have a I have a website that I look at statistically. It's called Synergy, and they break down like all the different levels of defense that you play. When you look at the pick and roll and the spot up defense by him, they were considered to be below average. And in the NBA today, a lot of the bigs that you see, those are the areas that they do well in, or pick and roll and spot up. So I have him 15th overall, and I know that he's been as high as 2 going to Golden State. And then another guy that I have is Devin Vassell. I have him at 26th on my board. And it's hard, too, when you look at, 12 points, 5 boards, a block and a steal, shot 50, 40, and 70 from the floor. It's just, to me, the defense is highly overrated, and his frame, to me, isn't like, he doesn't scream an on-ball stopper to me. And I think that's what he's being sold as to NBA executives.
You just hurt my feelings with that one. That hurt.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
No, but like I said, with this draft, like you said, everyone's gonna have their players in different spots. Like I'm high in Vassell, you're not.
Yep.
But that's how this draft is. It's literally all over the place. And as far as for me with that, I mean, I'm not crazy about Isaac Okoro. Like I said, I think he could be a good player, but to me, if you're going to take someone top 5, he's got to be able to do stuff on offense. And I don't know if his offense is going to translate into someone that's, going to be a 17, 18, even a 20-point scorer. I don't see that with him. Like I said, I see someone who could be very solid, offensively, someone who can average 13, 15 points a game, and bring you great defense, and that's fine. But with a top 5 pick, you're expecting someone that's going to help, be big time. And so maybe he might be a little overrated with that. But
I have him 16th overall on my board, so I'm not like uberly in love with him either. But I've also seen him kind of ranked lower on more boards than guys like your what's his name? Your Devin Vassal's and your Onyeka Okongwu's,
For sure.
I was gonna ask you guys, real quick, who do you consider the most intriguing player in this draft? Like,
I got one, Chris.
I personally was going to say Obi Toppin, just because he's all over the place. Like, like Chris was saying earlier, you could look at other draft boards and they have him anywhere from 2, 5, 10, 20.
I've seen 30, man. I've seen second round pick for some guys.
That's nuts.
And you see so many different things being said about him. The reason why I find him so intriguing is his offense. I think offensively he can be pretty gifted. I've seen some people throw comparisons out there to Amari Stoudemire, who in his prime was very explosive offensively, coming off the pick.
There's a lot of Amari in him.
I see a lot of Montrezl Harrell in him too.
He developed a little mid-range. Amari developed a little mid-range game. He never quite developed a three-pointer when he was in the NBA. I'm not too sure if he's shooting threes now over in Israel.
Yeah, it wasn't required then. It wasn't like as big of an emphasis for his position.
But offensively, that's a guy that I can see. See top and model his game off. Now, defensively is another story. That's where people also.
I think that's where people are slacking on him.
Well, Amari wasn't a terrific defender either,
and that's why you get the Amari comps because of that, because the defense. But.
And another reason why people have them all over the place is because of his age, which to me I still think it's a bit silly to factor the guy's age. I mean. He's 23. He's not old.
He's not 30.
Exactly. He's not an old man with old man knees and an old man back. No, the guy is still very young. He has plenty of time.
And he's going to come in prepared. He's going to come in ready to go.
Yeah, he's got an NBA-ready game already.
Because if you draft those 19-year-olds, some of those guys got to wait 2-3 years to develop.
Yeah, you're drafting off of potential.
That's what it is. For example, what if you saw somebody like Luka, right? If he was coming up in this draft, and Luka was just absolutely killing it in college or so, but he was 24. Would you not draft him because of his age?
I'll draft Luka at 30.
Exactly.
I draft him at 40.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine passing on a player of great talent, of potential great talent, because he's 23 or he's
Yeah, I think
24?
that's
I
very
mean,
silly. I think
Yeah.
that's silly to look into all that for sure.
Yeah.
But
I
for
have
me,
a couple of
guy
guys. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I
Go
have it
ahead.
to me, James Wiseman, man. James Wiseman, we only saw him play 3 games.
Yep.
Obviously, we know he's a physical freak.
Yes.
If he can develop the offense that, like, if he can get to like a DeAndre Ayton level offensively, we saw how DeAndre Ayton took his game to another level in the bubble.
Oh, of course.
If he, because they have very similar body types. You know, if he can get to that, then that could be he could be worth of the number 1 pick. You know, so to me, he's very intriguing. He didn't play in a lot of games, and in the games he played, it wasn't really against. I think only 1 game was against major competition.
Yeah, Oregon, I believe.
But
Hey,
Oregon. Yeah, so
he kind of reminds me of Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. I mean,
I don't know. I see a lot of
Good
Chris.
point.
I see a lot of Chris Bosh in his game, man. Like when I watch him
Bosh,
play it.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Chris
Bosh,
Bosh.
yeah.
I see a lot of Bosh in his game, man. I really think that mid-range jumper could be something that could be a strong weapon for him. You know, he's kind of a wiry post player. He's not really a strength guy, but still has the capability of finishing around the rim. He's a good free throw shooter. You know, he's got great touch. He's dangerous off the pick and roll, a lob threat. He's a little bit twitchy and jumpy on the defensive end, which is what we saw out of Chris Bosh coming out of Georgia Tech. And, you know, being able to switch off the pick and roll is something that I would be a little concerned about. But I see a lot of Bosh in him.
That's definitely interesting.
If he had played the whole year or whatever, most of the year in college,
Yeah.
I think he would be the number 1 pick.
Yeah, the
Because
consensus number
his,
1.
Because he's a physical freak, obviously 7'1", 240 pounds, and just the potential for him to be, you know, a guy that could do everything, you know, and be that size. I think that's what intrigues a lot of teams. And you know, I still think people, you know, he's another guy that I've seen people have all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely, to me, maybe
He's
the
number
most
1 on my
physically
board.
gifted player maybe in this draft, because he's I mean he could possibly be special, like really special, and that's gonna be see interesting to see where he goes, because you know I think right now he doesn't get past the Warriors at 2. I really don't think he gets past the Warriors at 2, but
I don't
only
either.
time will tell.
Yeah. So I have 2 guys, right? Jaden McDaniels out of Washington. I'm really intrigued by watching his game. You know, he's a long wing. He's kind of built like your Robert Covington's. He's, you know, 6'9", 200 pounds, can give you 13 points, 6 rebounds.
Washington has a few guys. Isaiah Stewart too is another intriguing guy.
Yeah. Hey, Bubba.
There you go.
Hey, sorry, my son just popped in here real quick.
All good.
Yeah.
All good.
Um.
We're a family show too.
Oh yeah. I've seen the kiddos. Hang on, buddy. I'll work on that with you here in a little bit. Okay. I'm almost done. I promise. All right, but yeah, I like Jaden McDaniels a lot. To me, he's kind of like a taller wing. I can see him kind of fitting into a mold as like a Jonathan Isaacs almost, or you know, somewhere along those lines. You know, he shot only 34% from deep this year, but shot 37% from the free throw line. So I think that you could see his 3-point game grow in the pros. You know, he kind of reminds me of Covington in a lot of ways with his help defense. You know, he's a little frail. He's not going to be a post stopper or a perimeter stopper, but he'll be a good team or help defender. And then another guy that like I don't see any love on is Amir Sylla out of Senegal. He doesn't have a lot of film and stuff on him, but man, like he comes from a place where we've seen a lot of athletes who, you know, in the NBA today, like Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, you know, Giannis Antetokounmpo, you know, these, you know, fellow African athletes that are just all hustle all the time and get better year by year. And I see a lot of those, you know, kind of similar traits in Amir Sylla when I've watched him play. His stats aren't sexy. You know, he averaged 7.6 rebounds and, almost a block, but he has a lot of upside to me.
Now, Steven, would he be a stash away project, or would you see him coming to the league right away?
Yeah, I have him. So on my piece that I wrote for the offtheballnetwork.com, shameless plug, I have him going to the Brooklyn
My
Nets.
guy, I like the plug.
Yeah, I have him going to the Brooklyn Nets as a draft and stash prospect because they have a loaded roster already, and I think that they can afford the risk of drafting and stashing a player if they were to keep their pick, if they don't trade it with Karis LeVert for a superstar. I think that he could be a draft and stash player, most definitely, and I think that for a team that can afford a risk, I mean, this could also be a very like Denver Nuggets type deal where they draft a player and he doesn't contribute right off the jump.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I think that he could develop into something special for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I have a few guys that are like super duper sleepers, and I may be biased because I interviewed them, but there's a guy from SMU, Isaiah Mike. I really like his game. A wing, very versatile, big, a wing, a big wing, 6'8". Definitely, he's definitely someone, a kind of a 3-and-D guy who I like a lot. Leslie Varner also is another from University of Texas Rio Grande. It's another good one. Eugene Herman is another guy who I like out of Northern Illinois. Just a bucket, 20 points per game last year. If we're just talking about scoring and you do need scoring, he's definitely a guy that I like a lot. And also Sasu Asai guy, a big led the country in blocks.
Okay,
he led the whole country in blocks. He was, he was played at Florida International. Yeah, he's an intriguing prospect. Can move. I see a lot of Ibaka in him.
Okay,
I see a lot of Ibaka, and I mentioned to them, I'm like, yo, not to gas you up, but like I see a lot of Ibaka in you. Like, and when Ibaka first came in the league, he was blocking everything.
Yep.
So I block. That's someone. I block. Yeah, he's definitely an intriguing prospect too. Like I said, led the country in blocks. Just a guy who just keeps getting better, and so those are just a few guys that I think are super, super deep guys. I don't know if they get drafted. I hope they do. Those are definitely guys that are super deep guys that we might see maybe in the round 2 or aren't drafted definitely in camps. But I know Steven's got to go. So before I let you guys go, we got 3 games on schedule tomorrow. So NBA is back, which is very exciting that we got basketball back. So we got the Magic and Bucks, we got Trailblazers, Lakers, and we got Thunder, Rockets. Orlando's going home, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so we can.
Yeah,
Orlando. Yeah. I think we all can agree that Gordon, they're going home tomorrow.
So is Portland.
And then we got Thunder, Rockets.
Yeah,
Thunder, Rockets. That's obviously tied 2-2. This has been a fun series. What do you see? And we got Russ coming back.
Yep, that's the key.
That's
the key.
Russ is back. That's the and what I've seen from his working out stuff, he looks pretty. He looks pretty. He looks close to 100% as you could be. So how are we looking for the Rockets and Thunder?
I think go ahead there, Edgar.
I can see the Rockets taking this one. James Harden looked absolutely beside himself after the last loss.
He was pissed.
He was pissed, and he has Russell Westbrook back, and now he won't have to handle the ball as much, depending on how many minutes D'Antoni decides to play Westbrook. But depending on that, I can see Harden absolutely going off. He's been hearing the things they've saying that they found a way to stop him and things like that. He might go off.
Lou Dortz.
40, 45. I can see that. And Westbrook is going to make CP3 work. He's going to make CP3 work, for sure.
Well, what's crazy to me for this matchup is that Harden has had to do everything, and I think that that's what has led to the 2 consecutive losses. OKC has stumbled upon a great lineup with your clutch, line up the 3 guards there with SGA, CP3, and Schroeder. But then they put in Lou Dortz as their 4 and Gallinari as their 5, so they can small ball.
Lou Dortz.
Yeah.
Did anyone think about Lou Dortz coming into the bubble? I didn't know who Lou Dortz was.
Listen,
he's been like a big factor in the
James
series.
Harden is paying attention. He's been seeing all the memes going around and stuff that Lou Dortz is keeping him on lock.
It happened in the regular season too. Even in the regular season, Lou Dortz gave Harden problems.
But you don't count
Randall.
James Harden out. This guy is gonna go off. He's due to go off. He's
I
been
don't
reading
think-
this stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't know about going off. I don't see like a 40, 45, and I could eat a big plate of crow if I'm wrong, right? I don't think that he does do that because I think with Harden or with Westbrook back, I think you see a bigger game from him, right? Because you've seen OKC kind of, scheme around Harden on the defensive side. It just, to me, with Westbrook back, we know that he's an emotional guy. He's an emotional player. He's going up against his old team. He's coming off of an injury. He's seen his team lose 2 consecutive games. He's seen one of his best friends in the world, James Harden, just struggling on his own. I really don't get caught up in the narratives a lot, but some players are narrative players, and to me, that's what Westbrook is. Westbrook is one of these guys that you have to pay attention to everything that's going on around him because that does impact his level of play and production. And I think that we're going to see probably a triple-double out of Russell Westbrook in his first game back. And whatever team wins this next game, I think wins the series.
Absolutely. And he got into it.
Yeah.
He got into it with Steven Adams last game, and they're supposed to be, So Westbrook, like you say, pay attention to every single type of narrative with Westbrook because.
Oh yeah,
He cares.
oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun game. It's gonna be a fun game with Russell Westbrook. But like I said, it's a coin toss. But I think the Rockets take Game 5, and like you said, whoever wins Game 5, I think eventually is gonna take the next game and win this series. But this series has been definitely fun. And then we have Lakers, Blazers
Without
no Damian
Yeah.
Lillard.
it's
Yeah.
done.
I mean,
They should just
it's
move
crazy how
on.
hyped-
They shouldn't even
It's
play.
It's crazy how hype. We were so hyped for Dame time, and they win Game 1, and everyone's going off a high, and then it's crazy how things change. But the Lakers, they're I don't see them having any issue in Game 5. I think they take this, and then they go on to the
Yeah,
next
the
series.
Lakers
But
just turned it on.
yeah. It sucks for Portland because that was fun.
Yeah,
that was fun.
I think that people forget
Well-
that CJ McCollum is literally playing with a broken back because he's still balling with a
Spinal.
broken back.
Spinal.
Yeah,
I know.
he's still playing well with a broken back, so I think people discredit that as a reason for why Portland's playing bad, but he's still
But next year, Portland next year, man.
with a healthy roster, with a free agency, with a draft where they can address some
They-
needs. I have them selecting Paul Reed, who I'm a super high on out of DePaul. Yeah,
DePaul, right?
I have them selecting.
That's good.
Yeah,
They could use. They need a wing. They need a big guy like that.
Oh, yeah, an enforcer.
Portland did what they could. Injuries just ended up catching up to them.
Injuries.
is
Zach
gonna
Collins
the-
got out again.
Collins,
Yeah,
Rodney Hood, Trevor Ariza couldn't make it in the bubble due to personal reasons.
Ariza was
I
tough
mean,
as he's a perimeter.
yep.
Yeah.
Perimeter defense.
They don't have a
Trevor
wing
Ariza.
defender. Gary Trent Jr. is no LeBron James stopper. If there is
No.
such a thing, he's not it.
No, definitely not. They had no one that could, that could guard on the wing, and that was their Achilles heel.
It's a big deal in the West to have a wing defender. It's a big deal.
No, the defense hurts, but they're definitely a team that we can, for next season, if they're, like I said, health.
Yep.
Knock on wood, if they're healthy, they could definitely be a player next season. But we'll see. But I'm happy we got basketball back. The last few days, no basketball, but obviously said, we're 100% behind the players. Like I said, if you love basketball and you're not supporting these players, I don't get it.
Yeah.
If it just doesn't make sense. But we get basketball back tomorrow, which is good. We get some games tomorrow and then Sunday. So NBA's back again, and I'm looking forward to watch. But Edgar, Steven, I appreciate you guys hopping on for a little bit and
Absolutely.
chopping it up on this Friday night. But you guys got any, Steven, you got any projects coming up? I know you've been doing some good stuff. Your last article, by the way, tremendous.
Oh, thank you
Round
so
of
much,
applause.
man. Appreciate it.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Definitely a good piece. And Edgar, you killing it on social media,
Yeah,
which like I
absolutely.
said, I've said it a million times. I appreciate that because it's the interaction we've been getting on the Off the Ball network Twitter has been great. And but you guys any projects coming up?
Yeah, just one more shameless plug for the piece that I just put out. I don't have anything in the Tumblr or anything like that, but that piece that I wrote was more of like a response to some of the criticism that I see NBA players getting now with the whole we've seen it evolve from shut up and dribble now to stick to basketball. It's a little bit cleaner of a saying, I think, for people who are critical of the NBA. But I think that people, just to kind of give a little bit of background, what I did is, basically answered one, is there such a thing as being credentialed enough to make your comments, credible as far as dealing with societal issues, right? So I went through and did a little bit of background investigation on players like, Jaylen Brown, George Hill, Malcolm Brogdon, and obviously Coach Doc Rivers. And if you do some investigation behind them just being athletes and the perception that athletes aren't intelligible at all, you go and look at what these guys have degrees in and stuff like that. Like Doc Rivers could legitimately be president of the United States. Like, no kidding. Malcolm Brogdon, when he's done, could have a job in Congress or legislation or anything like that. Jaylen Brown, the same thing. And Jaylen Brown and Malcolm Brogdon are like 25 and under. You know what I mean? And they have all these things that they're doing a great job at. Doc Rivers has life experience on top of having a degree in political science. So, when you have these credentials, like, yeah, they're basketball players, and sure, like many of them forego college to go and get guaranteed money because of their upbringing that they needed.
Don't you hate when people bring that up? Like,
I hate it so much.
Yeah, because they got $40 million that they're going to be right there in their laps when they leave. So
yeah, and they come from impoverished communities,
exactly.
and they're bribed to go to, like, they're painted out to be criminals even in an educational decision. You know what I mean? So it's just crazy to me. So I took a lot of time. Like, that article probably took a good 8 to 10 hours of, just sitting down and investigating and researching. It goes beyond basketball. I talk about, the poverty rate in our nation and like the demographics in which that's broken down into. And, if you care at all to go and learn something, I learned a lot just putting that article together. So go to the offtheballnetwork.com and take 10 minutes to read it. It shouldn't take that long, but if you want to take notes or whatever, I encourage that. Just take 10 minutes of your time and go read that article. I think that you'll learn a lot.
It's very informative. Yeah, I suggest people to check it out because it's more than just a pure basketball article.
Exactly.
It just shows so much more, and it definitely will open your eyes for sure. So, like I said, Steven, that was a great thing.
Appreciate it, fellas.
For sure. Yeah, definitely great. Edgar, you got anything going on?
The usual posting on the Twitter. I post my things, also my personal thoughts on NBA and sports things on New Tape City. If anybody wants to follow me, I've been thinking about this article that I want to write throughout the week, examining how the mental health that these players. The mental health aspects of being in the bubble, of these players being in the bubble, and
it's a major factor. Like, people don't
huge.
Realize.
Yeah,
like, being away from your family for that long is huge. Like, LeBron just celebrated his wife's birthday and he's not with her.
Yeah.
I wanted to look at.
I know all about that stuff, man. It's not fun. I don't wish it on anybody.
Yeah, I wanted to look at aspects of how there's people that criticize these players and saying like, well, you're in a bubble, like you're at Disney World in a bubble and there's a million amenities. But, that doesn't change the fact that these players still had to make great sacrifices to be away from their families, and not see their kids from day-to-day basis, their wives, girlfriends, best friends, things like that, It after being locked down at a certain place for too long, it can get a little harrowing. Like,
And look at COVID when it first happened, when we were locked down, especially in New York City. I mean,
there's
Edgar.
been several guys who questioned their decision to actually go there. Like Pascal Siakam was talking about it the other day. He said he felt like he needed to question whether it was a good idea to even come to the bubble, with everything that's going outside of it, and just that it doesn't feel. It feels like you're trapped in a sense, And I also wanted to look at how these guys are doing an amazing job at still being able to play while having no fans there. Can you imagine just playing? I know they get the crowd noise and they get the virtual fans, but it's not the same energy as
they know the difference.
That's still major for sure. Like, that's a huge thing. Like, no fans still is weird.
It's things that people dismiss, that people say, oh, well, suck it up. It's no big deal. But, you don't, we're not going through it. We're not living through it because we're not in that position that they're in. It's easy. It's always easy to say, I wouldn't feel this way or that wouldn't affect me. But until it happens.
It's always easy for people to say that when they're not in that situation.
Exactly.
Of course.
That's kind of some things that I want to look at and put it on paper and and share it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what the Off the Bold Network is. It's we love talking sports, but I love that we were able to dive into bigger things than sports and share that with people. So it's definitely something I love about what we're doing at the Off the Bold Network.
Also, I very much appreciate you guys for being patient with me, and knowing that
See?
Yeah. See what happens when we're patient?
See what happens when we're patient? We lost you there.
Sorry, got cut off for a second. Now, I appreciate the patience. I've never done podcasts prior to doing it with you guys, and I'm still learning. I'm trying to learn as much as I can.
This is a safe space, brother.
Yeah, and this is something, I'm going to school for media studies, and this is
I saw that the dude, your teacher, that's dope.
And
That's
this is something that I'm
stuff,
very
man.
passionate about, and I always felt nervous about hopping on a podcast and seeing how people.
We all were, bro. We all were.
But
because you subject yourself to criticism. As soon as you put yourself out there, you subject yourself to any thought that you have to being criticized.
Yeah, and
bro. I got a 2-star rating on iTunes. And I was like, bro, like they didn't like something I said, and they gave me 2 stars, and I was like, bro, I'm getting criticized. Like it's crazy.
Look,
they ruined my 5-star. They ruined my perfect 5-star rating, which kind of pissed me off too. But
and to anybody that's out there, if you're thinking about hopping on a podcast or putting yourself out there, just do it. Like as nervous as you might feel,
it's that simple,
and
man.
everything. Just do it. There's people who are out there who are understanding. Like you guys. You guys let me join your crew. And despite my experience, and look now, I'm learning and I'm getting better every day at it.
That's all you can do is learn,
man.
right? Like,
you're on your way,
nobody's
bro.
Nobody's I mean, listen, like I said before, my first shows. I mean, Steven, I'm sure when you first did, you were like, "What? What am I doing?" But then you learn. Like you go listen to other people's shows, and you take note. You do your homework. You take your notes. You do all that, and eventually you'll get the hang of it. And I'm sure once you'll get the hang of it, and then you'll be, you'll have people coming to you and asking you for advice. Like I have people asking me for advice, and I don't think I'm perfect at all at this. But the fact that you get people asking me like, I like the way you do this. Like, how should I go about this? And like, you're giving advice about podcasts. Like, I've only been doing this for about a year.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe less. Around that time, and it's like, wow, okay, like, but you could get better, and I'm still improving. You still figure ways how to get better.
It's like anything, just you got to put in the work, man. Just got to put in the work.
It's all about putting the work in. If you put the work in and
study other people too.
Study and you're not afraid to take constructive criticism. Listen, you can go far. You can go far. Listen, man, my podcast is, I went from, like I said, talking to a computer with no structure to having a little bit, to now like I'm running a network. Right? And my podcast has had some success though. I've had, I've done some cool things. I've been able to interview some potential NBA players and stuff. Steven, you've interviewed some great, journalists from Athletic and all that. So like, everything comes with time. It comes patience too. You got to be able to be patient. Rome wasn't built in one day. Like that.
One thing that I've learned is that you've got to not be afraid to be told no, and you got to be ready to be told yes. Like I tell anybody who asks me, don't be scared to be told no, and expect a yes and be prepared for a yes.
Yes. You know how many times I got left on red, bro, on Twitter, DM or sent out emails and didn't get no response. But hey, there's times I sent DMs and I got response. Like I said, the guys.
And then you're like, oh crap, like they really want me to interview
and then
them.
you're like, whoa. Now like, and you're like, and you're just actually like the next day, like, hey, can you come on the next day? And you're not thinking they're gonna respond. And like, yeah, I'll come on tomorrow. And they're like, oh, then you got to write down the whole show and like figure it out. I've done like all the NBA draft guys I've interviewed: Leslie Varner, Jordan Jackson, like I said, Isaiah Mike, all these guys, Herman, Asase Saiga, all those guys. I didn't expect to get on the show, and boom, I got them on the show, and you know, and you figure out their stories, and then you be able to tell those stories on your show and have good dialogue. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you're not always gonna get the yeses. I mean, just the other day, I got on a Twitch stream that Damian Dotson was having on his new channel.
Yeah.
You know, and I asked, he was having a Q&A, and I asked, you know, hey, would you like to hop on Knicks Fan TV and Off the Ball podcast, you know, for a show? And he actually read it, and you know, he politely said, you know, due to my free agency status, I'm not doing any talk shows. But hey, he said he politely declined. But at the end of the day, I still ask, you know, like just
small victory, dude.
You just never know. You just never know. So it's always good. You just got to just go at it, do it. Hey, there's going to be times you're going to fall on your face, but hey, you got to be able to pick yourself up and dust it off and then get on to the next, you know, move. So that's all you can do in the podcast world, because it's very, like, it's in the sports podcasting world. I mean, we know it's tough.
Because if you're going to build, you know, anything made out of steel is putting fire and beat to a bloody pulp too. So
it's a tough business, but like you said, that's why we have a group, and that's why we all help each other.
Right, man.
Because you can't do this by yourself. Everyone helps each other, and we all want to be great. So that's why we have this group. And like I said, even though you've had no podcast experience or whatever, you know, Edgar, that's not something we look at.
You got the drive, bro.
We know that what you want to do, and we know that you're a great addition to the team. So that's what we look at you and like, okay, he wants to be a part of this. That's the one thing, is you wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, and I was like, oh, cool. I appreciate you wanted to be a part of this. So that's why I was like, all right, let's give him a chance. Like, and boom. And I feel like, you know, once you get your all your stuff going, you're gonna kill it, because you got a nice following too. And like I said, you do cool stuff for Knicks Fan TV, which is a big platform, especially in New York City. You're gonna do good things. So, you know, it's nothing but success is gonna come your way. You know, especially once you continue to learn, and like you said, you're willing to learn. Not a lot of people are willing to learn. You know, and you're willing to learn. You're going to do good things.
And you got a skill set that you know, not everybody on the team had, and it was needed. So I mean, like, you, even though you're not necessarily, you know, a podcast expert, you know, just like we're not still, you know, like you still bring something to the team that, you know, made us better immediately with your addition.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. I know it's very dark here. Like, you guys can't really see my face. Because right now,
we're about to log off right now. All I see is trees.
I see is giant.
I see a silhouette of a man.
I'm literally in the dark right now. I don't have a single light.
I know, man.
I'm in the forest right now. I'm lost. I got lost from my group, so now I'm trying to find everybody.
Oh my goodness, yeah. You need to get on Google Maps.
All right, so we'll log off that, guys. This was fun. Appreciate you guys coming on short notice. You know, this was, like I said, this was fun chopping it up, and like I said, we got basketball back tomorrow, so that's great. So on that note, guys, like I said, enjoy the rest of your day. You know, Steven, go get some sleep. Edgar, make sure you don't get lost in Forest Hills Park.
Man, let us know if you need us to call some help or something, man.
Exactly. I'm not so far away. If you need me to come, I'm like 15 minutes away, so you know.
For sure, man.
You know. And another thing, and listen,
right
another thing on before we go, another thing we'd be able to. I didn't know Edgar lived 15 minutes away from me.
That's so crazy.
And you
man.
and Mo, you and Mo and Cruz live right.
Yeah, two towns over.
Together. That's what we do at the Off the Ball Network.
Bring people together. Yep. Bring the people together.
There we go. We bring the people together, guys. This was fun.
Always.
Make sure, like I said, be safe, and obviously we'll be doing more of these. So I'll see you guys soon.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Much love, everybody.
Peace out, Off the Ball fam.
Yep, much love.
Make sure to follow Off the Ball podcast.
Yep, go to the website.
Twitter, Facebook.
Don't be racist.
Website, and yes, number one, don't be a racist.
Yes, and mask.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard to not be.
And
racist.
wear a mask.
Don't do it. Stop thinking and wear a mask. Two things that are really easy to do, but yet people make it difficult. social distance. Just
Wash
be a
your
good
hands.
person, man. Wash your hands, take a shower,
Make your bed,
and just be a good person.
Yeah, just be a person. That's all.
Be a nice person. It's not that hard.
It's really not.
All right, guys.
Much love,
Good
guys.
night, fellas.
Take care, guys.